Most people think obsession is created by attention. It isn't. The more you chase, the more you explain. The more you try to be seen, the easier you are to forget. But some people do something different. They don't beg for attention. They don't reveal everything. They don't stay available long enough to become ordinary. And somehow, they stay in your mind, not for a minute, not for an hour, for days. You replay their words, their silence, their energy. You wonder what they meant, why they pulled back, why they felt different. That is not luck. That is psychological impact. In this video, you will learn why people ignore what is obvious, but obsess over what they cannot fully understand. Because real power is not forcing someone to notice you. Real power is becoming impossible to forget. Part 1. Attention is not power. Most men destroy their own influence before they ever build it. Not because they are weak, because they are obvious. They talk too much, explain too much, text too much, show too much, react too fast, give too much access. And then they wonder why nobody respects them, why nobody values them, why people lose interest, why their presence feels replaceable. Understand this now. Familiarity without depth creates boredom. Constant availability kills tension. Predictable behavior kills curiosity. Overexpression kills mystery. The human mind does not obsess over what is fully explained. It obsesses over what remains open, what remains incomplete, what remains unresolved. That is the shift. You have been taught to win attention, but attention fades. Influence remains. Attention is a flash. Influence is an imprint. Attention grabs the eyes. Influence hijacks the mind. And if you want to become unforgettable, you must stop asking, how do I make them notice me? Ask instead, how do I make my presence echo after I leave? That is a different game, a colder game, a stronger game. You do not need to be the most attractive. You do not need to be the funniest. You do not need to be the richest man in the room. But you do need control, control of your energy, control of your timing, control of your emotional exposure, control of what people get and what they do not. Most men leak power through neediness, through overcommunication, through emotional urgency, through the desperate need to be understood. And desperation always lowers value. Because the second people feel that you need their response, their praise, their validation, or their attention, you have already lost altitude. Power begins when your center is no longer in their hands, when you are no longer trying to force a result, when your identity no longer depends on being chosen. This is why some men walk into a room and say very little, yet everybody feels them. Not because they are trying to dominate, but because they are not trying to prove. There is a difference, a massive difference. Weak men perform, powerful men position. Weak men chase reaction. Powerful men control perception. Weak men rush to fill silence. Powerful men let silence do the work. And silence, when backed by certainty, is one of the most violent psychological forces on earth, because silence creates projection. People begin to guess, interpret, analyze, replay. The moment you stop overfeeding their mind starts feeding on you. That is not manipulation, that is structure, that is human nature. People remember what makes them feel, but they obsess over what makes them think and feel at the same time. That combination is lethal. So the first lesson is simple. Stop trying to be constantly seen. Start becoming mentally felt. Your goal is not to flood people with your presence. Your goal is to leave a mark strong enough that your absence becomes loud. That is where obsession begins, not in intensity, intention, not in overgiving, in strategic incompleteness, not in chasing, in gravity. And if you do not understand gravity, you will spend your whole life confusing attention with importance. While quieter men, colder men, more disciplined men take up permanent residence in people's minds. Part 2. Principle 1. Control mental space. The first principle is this: presence is not power. Mental replay is power. Anyone can stand in front of somebody. Anyone can send messages. Anyone can stay visible. But very few know how to create aftershock. Very few know how to say something so precise, so sharp, so weighted, that it keeps repeating in another person's head long after the moment ends. This is why less can become more. A shorter interaction with stronger substance often beats long exposure with weak energy. Think about it. The mind is selective. It does not treasure endless access. It treasures emotional residue, tension, meaning, contrast. If every conversation with you is long, obvious, and fully resolved, there is nothing left to replay, no unfinished edge, no mystery, no unanswered signal. But when your presence is calm, sharp, and limited, when your words carry weight because you do not waste them, when your energy is deliberate instead of overeager, you become heavier in memory. That is the law. Scarcity amplifies significance. This is why The disciplined man does not rush to fill every gap. He does not narrate his whole mind. He does not explain every silence. He does not hand people a map to his emotions. He lets the moment land, then he leaves it alone. And that is what weak men cannot do. They always return, always clarify, always overcorrect, always try to make sure they were liked. But the more you chase closure, the less memorable you become. Because closure relaxes the mind. What you want is controlled residue. A conversation that felt clean but not exhausted. A look that said enough without saying everything. An interaction that ended with weight still hanging in the air. This is how you begin to control mental space. Not by appearing more, by meaning more. You must become more intentional with your words. Cut the useless ones, remove the needy ones, kill the ones spoken only to keep attention alive. Speak to leave impact, not to avoid being forgotten. That difference alone will separate you from most men, because most men talk for reassurance. You will speak for imprint, and your silence must become clean, not awkward, not insecure, not passive-aggressive. Clean silence, the kind that says, I do not panic in empty space. That kind of silence unnerves people, because it reveals self-possession, and self-possession is rare. When a man is comfortable saying less, revealing less, reacting less, people feel it. They may not understand it consciously, but they feel the lack of hunger, and lack of hunger creates perceived value. You must understand the hidden rule. People do not mentally chase what is always available. They mentally chase what feels complete in itself. So stop trying to maintain constant presence. Instead, create precise moments. Moments that carry emotional density. Moments that feel more expensive than ordinary interaction. Moments that do not beg to be remembered, because they are too sharp to forget. This is how you become difficult to shake. This is how you begin entering minds without force. This is how your absence becomes a signal instead of a disappearance. And once your absence starts speaking for you, you are no longer competing with noise. You are operating from another level. Part 3. Principle 2. Be hard to categorize. The second principle is brutal. Predictability kills fascination. The mind relaxes around what it can easily label. The moment people think they have fully figured you out, you begin to lose psychological weight, not because mystery is magic, because the brain is lazy. It stops studying what it believes it already understands. This is why obvious men are forgotten. They are too easy to read, too easy to anticipate, too easy to place into a neat little box. He always texts the same way, always reacts the same way, always reveals exactly what he feels, always reaches at the same time, always follows the same emotional pattern. There is no tension there, no friction, no curiosity. And without curiosity, there is no mental occupation. Now understand this carefully. Being hard to categorize does not mean becoming fake. It does not mean playing childish games. It does not mean becoming random for attention. That is clown behavior, not power. Real unpredictability is controlled, subtle, grounded in self-command. It means you are not emotionally mechanical. It means people cannot reduce you to a script. It means your responses come from standards, not impulses. Sometimes you are warm, sometimes you are distant, sometimes you engage deeply, sometimes you withdraw to your mission, not to create confusion, to protect truth. Because a man who is building something real will not be consistently available for casual consumption. He is not a vending machine. He is not an entertainer. He is not a predictable source of emotional comfort. He has rhythm, standards, depth, private territory, and private territory is important because the more exposed you are, the easier you are to digest. The easier you are to digest, the less space you occupy. People obsess over layered things, things that reveal themselves slowly, things that suggest more beneath the surface. So stop presenting your entire identity in one sitting. Stop trying to be instantly understood. Stop giving people the full blueprint before they have earned access to the foundation. Let your life have compartments. Let your mind have doors. Let your ambition remain partly unseen. You do not need to lie. You do not need to posture. You simply need to stop overexposing your internal world. Because when everything is visible, nothing is valuable. When everything is known, nothing is chased. When everything is explained, nothing is studied. And the man who is studied, without asking to be studied, is the man who starts becoming unforgettable. Machiavelli's world was built on perception, not confession. He understood that once people think they fully understand your motives, they also think they know how to control you. Never give them that luxury. Let them see consistency in your standards, but do not give them total predictability in your access. Let them feel your presence, but do not let them own your rhythm. The strongest thing about you should not be what you show. It should be what you clearly could reveal, but choose not to. That choice generates weight, because restraint suggests options, and options suggest power. so become harder to summarize, harder to reduce, harder to read in one glance, not because you are hiding, because you are deep, and depth, unlike noise, keeps the mind working. Part 4. Principle 3. Controlled uncertainty. The third principle is where most men either gain power, or expose their weakness. Controlled uncertainty. The human brain is built to resolve patterns. It wants closure. It wants certainty. It wants to know where things stand. And when certainty is constantly available, the brain rests. It stops pursuing. It stops replaying. It stops investing energy. But when something feels meaningful and not fully settled, the brain returns to it again and again and again. That is why uncertainty, when controlled, becomes magnetic. Notice the word controlled, not chaos, not dishonesty, not emotional games played by broken people. Controlled uncertainty means this: you do not overconfirm everything. You do not overfeed reassurance. You do not make yourself fully searchable in real time. You allow enough clarity to build respect, but enough space to keep the mind alert. This matters because constant reassurance can become psychological sedation. It makes people comfortable, but comfort alone rarely creates depth. Depth is created when comfort meets tension, when access meets limitation, when interest meets uncertainty. Most men sabotage this immediately. The second they feel connection, they rush to define, rush to explain, rush to guarantee, rush to remove all possible doubt. Why? Because they are afraid of losing control. But that fear is exactly what destroys their leverage, because the need to be secured is itself a signal of dependency, and dependency weakens perception. A powerful man does not rush to lock every door. He lets reality breathe. He lets interest mature. He lets people feel his value without overselling it. This creates a loop, a healthy, powerful loop. Curiosity leads to attention. Attention leads to interpretation. Interpretation leads to emotional investment. And emotional investment creates memory. The key is discipline. You must never use uncertainty like a child uses confusion. You are not trying to make people anxious. You are trying to remain centered enough that you do not overperform certainty for approval. There is a difference, a decisive difference. Weak men say too much because silence scares them. Strong men can hold space without rushing to resolve it. Weak men demand immediate answers. Strong men allow time to reveal what pressure cannot. When you master controlled uncertainty, you stop behaving like a man terrified of being forgotten. You become a man whose life has weight beyond the interaction, a man with priorities, a man with momentum, a man whose attention feels earned, not endlessly available. That is when people begin thinking about you at strange hours. Because you are no longer a solved equation, you are a live question. And the mind clings to live questions, especially when they are attached to emotion. So stop rushing to make everything certain. Stop panicking when every silence is not explained. Stop trying to remove every unknown. Mystery is not built by lies. It is built by restraint, by pacing, by emotional economy. And the man with emotional economy always feels more powerful than the man who spends himself too quickly. Part 5. Principle 4. Associate your presence with elevation. The fourth principle is deeper than attraction, deeper than attention, deeper than image. If you want to become psychologically unforgettable, your presence must become associated with elevation. People do not obsess for long over what merely entertains them. They obsess over what changes them, what sharpens them, what exposes them, what forces growth. This is where most men fail again. They think value means comfort. They think being easy, soft, endlessly agreeable, and constantly available will make people attach. No, that may make you temporarily pleasant, but pleasant is replaceable. Pleasant is common. Pleasant is forgettable. Transformation is not. If your presence makes people feel stronger, clearer, more disciplined, more ambitious, more self-aware, you begin occupying a different category in their psychology. Now you are not just enjoyable, you are significant. This is why standards matter. This is why ambition matters. This is why discipline matters. Because people feel what you normalize. If you normalize excuses, distraction, emotional chaos, and mediocrity, your presence teaches weakness. But if you normalize precision, self-respect, focus, restraint, and purpose, your presence teaches ascent. And people remember whoever made them confront a higher version of themselves. Understand this. The The most powerful effect you can have on another person is not making them depend on you. It is making them meet a stronger standard because you exist. That is psychological elevation. When they speak with you, they think more carefully. When they stand near you, they become more aware of their habits. When they leave you, they feel called upward. That feeling lingers because growth creates friction, and friction creates memory. So do not build your identity around being liked. Build it around being respected. Not loud respect, not forced respect, earned respect, the kind that comes from congruence. Your words match your habits match your standards match your future. When that alignment is real, you stop needing to announce value. People detect it even in silence, even in brief interaction, even in absence, and then something powerful happens. You are no longer remembered just for what you said. You are remembered for what people become conscious of around you, their laziness, their inconsistency, their hunger, their potential, their excuses. Your presence becomes a mirror, and mirrors are dangerous because they reveal truth. This is why authority is not volume. Authority is alignment. It is the calm force of a man who has reduced internal contradiction. Become that, and you will not need to chase significance. Your presence will generate it. Part 6, Principle 5. Use emotional contrast. The fifth principle is this. The mind remembers contrast. Flat experiences disappear. Predictable emotions blur together. Constant sameness creates numbness. But contrast burns itself into memory. That is how the brain works. It remembers peaks, shifts, changes in tone, changes in energy, changes in emotional atmosphere. This is why some people linger in memory longer than others. Not because they were louder, because they created emotional texture. Now listen carefully. This does not mean becoming unstable. It does not mean becoming toxic. It does not mean weaponizing inconsistency. It means becoming dimensional. A man with presence is not emotionally flat. He is controlled, yes, but alive. There is warmth when it is earned, distance when it is needed, intensity when it matters, stillness when words would weaken the moment. That range creates depth, and depth creates memory. If you are always available in the same tone, always easy, always over-friendly, always equally reachable, you lose edge. Your emotional signature disappears into the background. But when your energy has precision, when your attention feels intentional, when your warmth is selective, when your seriousness is real, people feel difference. Difference creates imprint. This is why discipline is not coldness for the sake of performance. It is contrast management. You know when to speak, when to hold, when to soften, when to cut, when to step in, when to step away. Each move has shape, each moment has force, each shift means something, and meaning is what the mind stores. Most men are too emotionally cheap. They reveal the same energy to everyone. They make no distinctions. They create no emotional architecture, so nothing sticks. But when your emotional world has standards, when access changes the experience, when not everyone gets the same version of you, you become more memorable. Not because you are acting, because value naturally comes with tears. The world remembers what feels rare, not what feels mass-produced. So cultivate range, calm without passivity, warmth without over-availability, intensity without chaos, distance without weakness. That combination is powerful because it signals a man who is governed, not a man governed by others. And once your emotional presence becomes distinct, people stop merely interacting with you. They start feeling marked by you. Part 7, Principle 6, leave before the peak collapses. The sixth principle separates the disciplined from the desperate. Leave before the peak collapses. Most men stay too long. They overtalk, overtext, overexplain, overextend. They feel a good moment and then ruin it by trying to squeeze more from it. This is one of the fastest ways to kill psychological impact. Because once the moment has already peaked, anything extra usually lowers value. The joke becomes less funny. The conversation becomes less sharp. The presence becomes less magnetic. The energy begins to leak. And the mind does not remember the full timeline equally. It often remembers the emotional ending. So if you want to become unforgettable, learn to end on strength. End while tension still exists. End while energy still has weight. End before the moment decays into ordinary. This creates an open loop, an unfinished line in the mind, a lingering sensation that keeps replaying because it did not fully exhaust itself. That replay is power. This is why disciplined timing matters so much. A strong exit can multiply the memory of an entire interaction. A weak exit can flatten everything that came before it. Understand the principle. More is not always more. Sometimes more is dilution. Sometimes more is exposure. Sometimes more is desperation wearing the mask of enthusiasm. You must know when enough has already become powerful. And then have the discipline to stop. That is rare, because stopping requires inner security. It requires the ability to walk away from immediate emotional reward. It requires the confidence to trust your imprint without forcing more proof. Weak men linger because they want reassurance. Strong men leave because they understand resonance. Resonance needs space. It needs silence after impact. It needs distance after energy. It needs room for the other mind to replay what just happened. If you never allow room, you kill the replay. If you explain every moment, you kill the replay. If you stay until all tension is spent, you kill the replay. So learn the art of the clean exit. Not rude, not dramatic, not attention-seeking. Clean, intentional, unapologetic. You leave because your life continues. You leave because your world does not end with the interaction. You leave because self-respect knows when to close the door. And the man who closes doors well is remembered, because endings shape memory. Part 8 in Principle 7, Never Signal Need. The seventh principle is the spine of all the others. Never signal need. Neediness is not always loud. Sometimes it hides under politeness, under over-explaining, under constant checking, under immediate replies, under the urge to keep connection alive at any cost, but the signal is the same. I need this response. I need this approval. I need to know where I stand. I need your attention to feel steady. And the moment that signal is felt, your value drops. Not because people are cruel, because need transfers power. Whoever needs more usually bends more. Whoever bends more is perceived as having less gravity. This is why independence is magnetic, not fake indifference, not cold acting, real independence, a life that is full without constant validation, a mission that continues whether others understand it or not, a nervous system that does not collapse when access is delayed, a self-image that does not beg to be chosen. That is strength, and strength has pull. When people sense that you are grounded in your own direction, that your mood is not controlled by their behavior, that your purpose is not interrupted by uncertainty, that your identity is not starving for external proof, they feel a different kind of man, a man who cannot be cheaply manipulated, a man who cannot be easily baited, a man who is difficult to own. And what is difficult to own often becomes difficult to forget. This is the paradox. The more you need to be remembered, the easier you are to dismiss. The less you need to force your significance, the more your significance grows, because self-sufficiency creates scarcity, and scarcity creates value. So, kill the habits that leak dependence. Stop checking for signs. Stop begging with your energy. Stop over-investing before reality has earned it. Stop making others the center of your psychological weather. Bring your center back to your body, back to your standards, back to your work, back to your mission. Need is loud. Power is quiet. Need reaches. Power selects. Need panics. Power observes. Need explains. Power decides. And the man who decides, without emotional begging, always carries more weight than the man who asks to be carried. Part 9. Now put it all together. Scarcity creates value. Uncertainty creates thought. Contrast creates memory. Elevation creates significance. Restraint creates mystery. Independence creates pursuit. This is not luck. This is architecture. You are not becoming more powerful by talking more. You are becoming more powerful by leaking less. Less insecurity, less urgency, less emotional dependence, less random exposure. You are learning to become expensive, not arrogant, not fake, expensive. A man whose attention has standards, a man whose presence has consequence, a man whose silence has shape, a man whose absence has echo. That is the transformation. You stop being easy to access, easy to read, easy to replace. You stop handing people all of you at once. You stop chasing explanation. You stop fearing distance. You stop collapsing into overexpression whenever emotion rises. Instead, you become composed, measured, difficult to reduce. And when that happens, people begin carrying you in their mind without your effort. Not because you begged, because you changed your energetic rank. You are no longer trying to be liked by everyone. You are becoming unforgettable to the people who can feel depth. That is a better goal, a stronger goal, a rarer goal. Because attention from the crowd is fragile, but impact on the mind is durable. So let weak men chase visibility. Let them perform. Let them explain themselves into irrelevance. Let them flood every silence with insecurity. You do something else. You build presence through subtraction. You build weight through restraint. You build intrigue through discipline. You build memory through controlled contrast. And above all, you stop trying to control people directly. You control yourself so completely that people cannot help but feel the difference. That is the deepest form of influence. Part 10. Remember this. The most unforgettable man is not the one who demands attention. It is the one who changes the atmosphere. The one who is calm when others are impulsive. The one who is measured when others are desperate. The one who leaves before he becomes ordinary. The one who never asks for what his presence should already command. That man becomes mentally heavy. mentally expensive, mentally unavoidable. So, from this moment forward, stop trying to be everywhere. Be exact. Stop trying to be understood by everyone. Be deep enough that shallow eyes cannot hold you. Stop trying to keep every door open. Close some. Let silence do its work. Let distance create shape. Let mystery create pressure. Let discipline create rank. And most of all, never beg to live in somebody's mind. Become the kind of man they cannot remove. Not through noise, through gravity. Not through chasing, through self-command. Not through need, through power. That is how you become unforgettable. That is how you become untouchable. That is how you stop asking for importance and start embodying it. If this message hit you, comment, "I become the echo." And if you are ready to build a mind so disciplined, a presence so sharp, and an identity so unshakable that the world feels you even in your silence, then subscribe now. Because this channel is not for the average. It is for the few who are done performing, done pleading, and ready to become dangerous through discipline.